Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned in to reflect, recharge, and reignite your photography, hosted by Sony. I couldn't let Chris Orwig get away without. I was like, look, you either got to finish the year or start the year. I feel like if we get you the last week of the year, it's kind of like we can end the year right and go into the new year right. So, came up with this idea, and here we are.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's super excited because part of this idea, we talked about this offline, but just share with everyone, came from I have a friend who is a director, like a feature-length film director, and he talks about how when he finishes a film, like you kind of finish a film and you end at such a low, and it's really hard when you're in that low to generate energy to climb back up the hill again. So as he's finishing a film, he starts a new one. And he always has that intersect so that it's not like you're just so deep in that you're like scrambling your way out. So anyway, kind of playing with that a little bit, which is the new year starts now. Rather than like having all this fun and holidays, whatever everyone celebrates and different things, and then kind of being like, let's start fresh on January 1st. It's almost too late. And so what the hope of this is to set some intention, get excited, recharge, revive now, and then carry that towards the first and then really hit that year running.
I
Does that
love
sound
that.
good?
Yeah, it's like it's like an overlap.
No
You
overlap.
can't, yeah, if you deplete completely, you're starting with zero. You move
Yes.
it over while you still got a little bit in the tank.
Yeah, yeah. And also ruminate on it while we're here in this time, because most of us have a little more time in our work schedules. We have some space to really think and dream and pause and use that rather than just like let it throw it away, kind of let it go. Use that as incubation time, as kind of generate idea time, so that by the time we hit January 1st, we're not like looking what gym should we join or something. What photo project should we do? We're like, okay, yes, I'm ready for this. And so we're kind of getting a jump start in everyone else is the way I like to think of it. It's almost like getting up, I don't know if you've ever had a job like this, Derek, but like those jobs where everyone comes into work, let's say at 9, but you get there at 8 and you have a full hour before everyone else, and that hour makes all the difference. Um, or for me on a photo
That's
shoot, I always arrive early before everyone. I get feel for light, wind, noise, everything. And then, so that's kind of what I want to do here for us as we think about our photography arc, our photography path, our photography vision. Like, how do we not just end well, but end well and then pivot all that energy into a really epic start?
I love that. That's the sign of a successful person. Getting
Yeah.
there early, waking up early,
Yes.
getting everything in line. It's funny. See, again, we align. I'm the same type.
Yeah.
I always, whether I have to be there earlier or not, it's like I do like when I'm able to get there early and have my alone time, my time to settle into the office, even if it's just a regular day at the office, get
Yeah.
settled in, have my coffee, catch my bearings, set
Yeah.
myself up for the day. And then by the time everyone else is getting there and running around, you're like, all right, I'm already good. I'm good to go, ready to hit the ground
Yes.
running.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I think that is part of I'm going to say the creative arts, right? Like part of what we do is we're really good at like making the most with the thing in the moment. So we're good at like something happens, we can field a lot of stuff. Like even we talked about COVID right beforehand, just a little bit. Like for creatives, it wasn't like this huge shock. We're like, okay, big curveball. Okay, let's figure a lot of stuff out, and the creatives are adept at being adaptable, modifying, you know, all the things. So that I feel like is innate to us as creatives. What maybe isn't as innate is the idea of the early and often, and sometimes we fly by the seat of our pants. Sometimes we're reacting to the moment. But if we can have both of those superpowers, meaning planning ahead, getting grounded, setting intention, reflecting, recharging, and reacting to the moment as it comes, it's like it's pretty awesome. At least that's what I've seen. The pros, like some of the, my best, I'd say photographers, you kind of look like, are they just winging it? And then you realize like, no, it just looks like that because they've rehearsed so much, they've practiced so much, they have such a strategy. And so what, and I would say anyone who's good at anything like ice skating or baseball or surfing or whatever, it's all the stuff you don't see that makes it come off so easy or look so easy. So anyway, that's the goal for the day. I have slides, we have conversation. And so maybe at this point we dive into the slides
Do it.
and then you and I will jam, we'll talk about this stuff. Does that sound good?
Wonderful. Always a good
Okay.
plan.
Okay. And then I'm going to share this screen and then I'm going to have you tell me if this is full screen and we can see my slides, which says the title of today. Can
Got
you
it.
see that? Okay. Amazing. And this kind of comes at the end of a series where we've been looking at how the camera can bring a lot of joy to life and how it can catapult and deepen and expand our life. And so for me, that's a lot in my mind, just how powerful, wonderful photography is. Also, actually, let me just do one thing. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that I had the right version of the slide. I've written a few books. If anyone is curious about either becoming more creative or portraiture, those books are on those topics. And I've had a chance to photograph a lot of different people, astronauts, friends, legends, weddings, and I love doing photography. And so, with this little brief snapshot, what I'm thinking about is here we have this new year coming up. This new year is going to have a new vibe for you, for me. It's going to have a new flow. It's going to be similar but different. And that happens every year. And I love this idea of a slingshot. As a kid, I used to have one, and you pull it back. So you're almost like going backwards a little bit and then releasing, and that launches you forward. So, what I want to do today is have that slingshot metaphor in mind and just think about, okay, let's go back for a minute. And I want you to do this for yourself. I'll lead you through how I would do this. But I want you to ask this question of what gets you stoked, fired up, what makes you really grateful, what makes you really excited. And we're going to do a little bit of work where we're not just going to say, what do I want to do in the new year, but what have I done in the past that really gets me fired up? So, photography brings a huge smile to my face. So does movement, biking, surfing, swimming, all those things. Those are things I know I need to have. And so I want you to look back over your last year and just say, like, what are the things that, like, what were the peak moments? Like, my family going to Kauai, our favorite place in the world. There's a picture of our family and my daughter. That really, really excites me. So right now, we're not necessarily thinking photographically so much. We're just kind of thinking, like, what happened throughout this last year that really got us excited. Another thing that really I marvel at is that portraiture allows me to connect with so many different types of people from so many different walks of life. So I just like often, like, this is the gratitude part. I am so grateful for the interactions I've had with all of these people and others. Another thing that fires me up is getting a chance to work with purpose-driven visionary brands that go above and beyond kind of delivering something that create experiences and connection, and they really make the world a better place. So these are all brands I've worked with. And so again, for me, I'm kind of just going back in my catalog in my mind. What about this last year has been inspiring? What has made me grateful for, the stuff that I've done? And recently, a few weeks ago, I was in Switzerland and I was thinking about one of the ways that we can think backwards, but then also think forwards is to begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey said in, all of his famous books, and really think about connecting with our future self or future friend. What I mean by that is let's say I were to say to Derek, hey, I'm going to Switzerland. Think about after I returned, what would I want to tell that friend about that experience? What is it that I want to say a year from now that I look back on and say, oh man, this year, these things happened. So almost like connect to the end of the year, 1 year from now, talking to yourself or in a journal or talking to a friend, and really starting to then ask yourself what happened in this year that was amazing. And some people will call this stuff intention setting, manifesting, but really it's about kind of visualizing where we want to go. And the reason I want to do this is so that we can get there. And the title of this one is about this presentation is about reflecting, recharging, and reigniting our passion for photography. So we want to get somewhere. How do we get there? Now we're going to kind of go to the reflection part a little bit more and reflecting back in search of wisdom. But before I do that, I feel like I should stop this and I feel like I should have Derek back on for a moment. And Derek, I should ask you a question as you look over 2024. What were a few highlights? And this does not have to be photographic, but just what are things at this stage in life that are exciting you, that are firing you up? And I want to use this as an example just so we can hear someone else's, and then so you can start to articulate your own. The listener can start to articulate your own. Okay. So what have been a few highlights for you?
In general, trimming through the fat.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is in life, connections that aren't serving me.
Okay.
Knowing a little bit about more of with every year, I feel like I get to know who I am more as a person and as a creative.
Yep.
And I did a good job this year of focusing my efforts on things that serve me, whether it's I dedicated way more time to running this year. And that was
Okay.
big for me in getting just my mind calibrated and focusing on the work that I need to work on.
Okay. And can I pause you right there?
Yeah.
So let's just play with running for a second. Running's brought you a lot of joy. A year from now, what would you like to tell me about 2025 running? Either like consistency, a distance, maybe your knees better, you feeling in your body. Tell me, like a year from now, what would you love to tell me? And I'm going to turn off my little heater. I have a space heater here. Um, okay. I was
A
cooking.
year
All
from
right.
now, I will have either run my first marathon or will fully feel ready. And that was something that I've
Okay.
waffled
Okay.
on, even wanting to run that
Yeah.
distance.
And
And
so, and let's just play with that. So one way to do this kind of thing is to say a year from now, and if you don't mind just playing along with me,
yeah,
a year from now, I'll tell you, Chris, I ran my first marathon and here's how it felt. Here's how I felt during it. Here's how I felt after it. Here's where it was. It was in New York City. I'm making all this up, but you tell me. And and also it then here's how it affected maybe a couple other areas of your life. So I'm just trying to not direct you too much, but give you some ideas. So a year from now, you tell me with
so a year
running.
from now, Chris, I ran my first marathon.
Epic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It felt great to be able to put in the hard work and, more importantly, the consistency to complete it because the training is grueling. It relies pretty much on consistency and consistency alone. If you're not
Right, right.
consistent, you can't do it. So the consistency in completing that told me that I can take that same drive and determination and put it towards my creativity, which is something that has lacked consistency and vision. And I can take that same vision and determination into 2026 with my creativity. And I can do the same thing that I did with running with my career and the new directions that I want to take with my career.
Okay, awesome. And then just reflecting back, what I'm hearing is consistency. I'm also kind of can add a little bit. You felt good during the marathon, meaning some people run marathons, they're wrecked and they never want to run again. But instead, you felt great. It spilled over into the other areas of your life because you saw progress and then you're like, wow, this is great. Be consistent. And you're going to do that creatively. So, and that's kind of what we're thinking about here is we're reflecting on our last year. We can do this obviously photographically, but as photographers, we need these other things which inform, shape, and affect who we are, right? And so part of this, I think, is reflecting back. We will also reflect back later on negative things. So it could be I was with a group in Switzerland leading this leadership retreat, and someone said, reflecting back on this last year, I haven't exercised, but like 3 or 4 times. And she was an athlete, but then work took over. And so for her, it was like that that went wrong. I want to fix that wrong. So we'll do a little bit of the wrong to right later. But right now, we're just kind of like, what do we love? What makes us come alive? As photographers, we have to be alive. We have to have vitality. I feel like for me, physical movement is huge just so I can carry my bags, so I feel alive, alert, in tune. And also, I love the idea, like you said, the consistency, and that photography is a craft. It's not like you can just do it, like running. You can't like run in January and then expect in April you can go out and run 10 miles. You'll hurt yourself. I think photography is a little bit like that too. I mean, it's not as physical, of course, but we get rusty, right? And
Yeah.
so the practice, the art of practice in any craft is key. Let me jump back to the slides, and then we'll keep jamming on all of this. And hopefully this helpful and interesting. And if people have questions, comments, we'll do that. But a little bit of reflecting on the next step is kind of on your images in search of wisdom. So I'm encouraging you, you could go through your phone, you go through your portfolio, through your Lightroom catalog, whatever, and just kind of say like, what is it about these images you've captured that gave you a sense of wisdom, or what's the wisdom you can pull from it? So this is Peter, who I became friends with through photography. He's an artist. And for me, being around artists is a great source of inspiration. So as I reflect back on photographing artists, I love it. And part of it is they are weird. I mean, they just embrace their inner weirdness, and they get so focused on something, so idiosyncratic about something, that it becomes a collection, a set, a voice, a vision. And so for me in 2025, I want to spend more time with artists. I don't care what kind of artists. And so I want to find photography where I'm photographing artists. Looking at my photography and looking at wisdom that I've gained is, in this case, through this yoga teacher. We were on this photo shoot, and she had stepped in some dog poop, and she responded to it with so much equanimity and so much peace. And it was like, wow, when when things go wrong, literally or metaphorically, I'm not as calm. So she, in this particular photograph, bareback on this horse, her horse, out by the ocean, and just she has this sense of ease, and the wisdom is I want more of that ease. When I photograph yoga teachers,
Chris, just so
yes.
we're seeing presenter view.
Oh, you are?
If you
Okay,
want,
let's see.
yeah, let's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Stop share. Let's go back.
go back in and we'll
Because
make sure we get it right.
yes, thank you, thank you. You're seeing the my second monitor probably. So let's see if I can choose the right one. Let's just see. Okay, are we seeing Peter now?
There we
Okay.
go. Looks
So
good.
this one, and it was, it was so synchronized, but maybe not. So artists inspire, being around artists, they're idiosyncratic, and just really looking at her photographs in search of wisdom. And one of the ways that is just how do these people carry themselves? So in the yoga teachers, I think well, one, I practice yoga, so it's really important to me, but they have this ability to deal with challenges with a sense of calm. Um, this is another guy I photographed. He is the guy in charge of Sony cameras. So all the Sony cameras that I use, they are like the result of his genius. And I love his smile. He has these smiling eyes. And I think that makes me, what it made, the wisdom I pulled from this, we were just hanging out at the Sony event, and he had this cool, I think you maybe call it a kimono, I'm not sure. He's from Japan. I asked if I could capture a portrait, but I just love the smile. And that has helped me bring more of a smile to when I'm working with the cameras. And it's also connected me. Like sometimes I think we think cameras are just created far away, but this guy, like, design, built, mastermind behind these things. So that's great little wisdom. This is one of my best and closest friends. And because I basically going through my archives, which I'm encouraging you to do, and ask like, why do you like this image? What is it? Wisdom is it telling you? And this one is like, don't forget to photograph your best friends. Like there were models at this thing we were at, and I could have photographed them, but Brandon, he's had such a big impact on my life. I want to photograph people who've had that impact. And so really spending time to do that. Here, a couple more people, Prince on the left, and then Young Pueblo poet on the right. And as I was looking at these photographs, not only are these people who inspire me, these are people I admire. And I've realized that that's a huge fuel source for my photography. My best and favorite portraits aren't maybe necessarily technically the most wow inspiring, But for me, what fills my heart, what ignites that, what recharges me, what fires me up is photographing people who I admire. And that could be like on the left, this friend Zubin who was driving his motorcycle through town. We haven't seen each other for over a decade. And I just, as we hung out, and I said, "Can I capture a portrait?" Because I admire who he is. And in doing that, I'm also wanting to admire people who are friends and strangers. The guy on the right is a stranger, as a way to connect with people and discover admirable qualities about them. Another thing that I'm thinking a lot about in photography is how it's very iterative and kind of exploratory. And what I mean by that is sometimes I'll photograph someone one way in front of this blue backdrop on the left, and then walked over to this window on the right. Now, in a way, it's kind of the same concept. I was asking her to put her hands near her head. And I like the one on the right better than the one that's up close. But this idea that photography, what it teaches me is to not just be one and done, but to iterate and to experiment and to try things out. And as I'm trying to capture a little bit of who someone is, a lot of times I realize what I'm trying to do is tell a story. And we hear this a lot. Photography is storytelling. But the thing that I think you need to do is look at your photographs and say, what kind of story are you trying to tell? And how do we tell that story? So let me show you a few images that illustrate this. I was photographing this meditation retreat and they met at this beach in Santa Barbara. So I'm telling the story of the gathering and horses in the background. That just happened, but that was kind of cool. Then the retreat leader needs a photograph of herself for a website. So I do that. And her best friend is watching along. And I was like, hey, why don't you get in there with the photograph? And I got some photographs of them. And then that was really all she needed was her and the retreat. But then I said, well, what if I photograph the people who are at the retreat? And what these photographs remind me of when it comes to storytelling is this idea of yes and. Yes and is always, it always leads to the win. What I mean by that is yes, do what you need to do and search for other elements of this story in this moment because that leads to a story that for me wins, that saves the day, that says so much more. Imagine if I just did what I was supposed to. It's a fine shot. She used it on her website and and all the things, and I have a couple different iterations of it. But it's like yes, and I got one of her that she needed that, but then her friend photo, that's just for the fun and joy of it, and then also connecting one-on-one with some of these people here. Let me pause right here because I obviously have more slides. But Derek, I want to ask you what's coming in for you as I am reflecting on my own images. I don't know if you can conjure up any of your images or any of your photographic experiences and think about what wisdom has it brought you? Like, what did you like about a particular photography experience? So again, we just have more examples than my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, first of all, your images, there was some stuff there that I haven't seen,
Mm,
and it never ceases to amaze me. You're so damn good at what you
mm.
do. So I just got to throw that in there
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
before anything else. Like every time I
Yeah.
look at your work, it really does make me want to take on more commercial work, more
Mm,
portraiture, step out and do, because it's like I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I would want to do.
mm.
Like I want to shoot more of that. Anyway,
Yes.
um, so it's interesting. This was a year where I didn't photograph as much,
Mm,
but I did move more in a direction of more fulfilling work. So reflecting back on it, and it's more of a recent development
yeah.
in working with one of the companies I'm sponsored by,
Yeah.
that I've started working more closely with them in creating, um, I guess for lack of a better word, I hate using the word content, but it is what it is, and it's stuff that we are using, and but more
Sure.
intentional and less brandy, I
Mm,
don't know, like more creative, like content from somebody who's not just a brand chill and more of a creative and
mm,
more of a narrative appeal to it.
mm,
And while obviously you can't use all that, it has opened up an avenue of creativity in me in
mm,
exploring more narrative driven types of work and really making me dive into storytelling more. And
Mm,
I think for so long, I was just about a single image.
mm.
And now moving more into video. And in reflecting on that, I see that not only have I changed, I'm constantly changing and I'm moving. It's kind of like opened up a new part of me. So I don't know if this is answering the question at
Yeah,
all. I'm
yeah,
just
no,
kind of
no,
throwing stuff out,
no,
but
it's good. I'm just gonna,
um
yeah, keep going, or I can reflect back too.
yeah, it's something that as I've looked, because I've spent a lot of time as of recently, looking over video clips and kind of just parsing through all the stuff that I have created, which isn't what I'm so used to creating. And I think the biggest reflection for me is getting used to the change in the type of work I'm producing because I can't look at it with the same set of eyes.
Mm,
I'm looking at it and expecting to see work from 5, 10 years ago. And there was a little bit of like a dissatisfaction with it.
mm,
And recently I started to look at it with a fresh perspective and saying, well, I can't look at it expecting the work of five or
mm,
10 years ago, or even
mm.
2, 3 years ago, because it's different. I'm different. I'm moving into another realm. So for me, it was hard to table old me and my old work and kind of accept this new vision.
Mm.
And I feel like it was holding me back because I was trying to play a 2024 game with 2015 rules.
Yeah,
And I feel like that was holding me back. And now that I've accepted the 2024 rules and incorporated that into 2024 vision, it's allowing me more leeway to go forward because now I'm not binding myself by this old version of me, the
right.
person, and me, the photographer.
Love it, love it. And so just reflecting a little bit. One is you said I haven't done a lot of photography this year, so I'm sure we can all relate to that. But there's an ebb and flow to it. So wherever you're at, no, that's okay, but tune into that. And then two, I like how you talked about this idea. I'm just distilling a little bit, but the old and the new. And you're in a creative generative stage where disconnecting from the old is going to help you, it sounds like. Versus some people might be in a stage where maybe they've been photographing trees for 4 years and they want to do another year photographing trees. And so it's not disconnect from your old way of photographing trees or landscapes or whatever, but rather deepen and continue. What I hear you saying is what's bringing in new stuff for you, letting go of some of the old stuff, embracing something new. And so that the wisdom of letting go and embracing is a little bit like a tree dropping leaves, so new leaves and fruit and all the things can come. So if this were coaching or something, I would be like, okay, let's figure out what we can drop. Let's figure out what we can cut. Let's figure out what we can let go of. What is holding you back? If we were musicians, it would be the last album that was a hit. Always is a hurdle. Like there's a success hurdle. If you're successful, the new album, you so much badly want to just rewrite the old album because it worked. But you have to say we have to sever that. We're going, or you're going into new territory where you have to embrace mystery. And I'm making this up, and you could say, no, Chris, I disagree. But what I would argue is that your best work this next year is going to come from uncertainty, mystery, disconnection from the past, and discovery of who you are. Like, I don't even know if we know who we are, but photography can kind of help us and be like, wow, I did that. So that would be, I would think, a fun way to look at work and then explore moving into work. Does that resonate a little bit?
Dude,
Or,
totally. No,
okay.
you don't even have to worry about me saying, no, Chris, you're way off. That's it. And it's pushing boundaries and moving into that
Yes.
unknown. And
Pushing it. Yeah. And that's your call. I mean,
yes,
I think it's,
we get stuck in the familiar.
yeah,
and
yeah.
and you have to you have to hit a point of growth, and you can't grow by shedding, or you can't grow without shedding skin, without shedding layers and moving into I mean, the very definition of
Yeah.
growth is newness.
Well, and what I would argue is for you, I think for someone else, the very definition of growth might be roots and soil digging deep into something they're
Ooh,
already into.
interesting.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's really about asking where are we at and what's going to be growth for us. And doing so, I think by reflecting so that we can then, again, the slingshot, like what's back, what happened, what do I need? Where I would say, like I have one friend who's a photographer He's always in search of novelty. So every image he does is new or different or exciting or shocking than the old. And I think that approach in his photography is kind of tired because it's just like something new again, something new again, something new again. And it's just like, oh, it's like, I think for his growth would be doing the opposite. It would be like, okay, forget novelty. I think if he were to settle and study and get to know and pursue something thematically, whether that's like working with one particular brand and developing a really deep relationship with them and telling a meaningful story. And this is obviously my own judgment on the situation, but if he were asking me as a coach or friend, I would say like I would kind of ask him like how is your work, is it still exciting to you, and is it feeling deep and meaningful? And I know what he would say. No. He would say like I'm like creating widgets at this point and I know how to do it. I know how to excite everyone, but it's not igniting his passion. So anyway, the whole point I think is like where are we at? Look backwards, slingshot, whoosh, let's go back. And then what's our trajectory move forward? So for you, I would say novelty, mystery, freaking just like letting go of things, shaking it up, and I'm guessing that would be your growth edge. Let's go back to the slides, just to keep it going, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I'll share the right screen this time. And the next one is I did this shoot for Lululemon, and this is the ambassador that showed up, and she showed up kind of dressed like this and with her sunglasses on. And this image, while it was not used by Lululemon, and I still like it. I think it's a great image, but it reminds me that you have to begin right away and where you are. A lot of times we think like, well, I need to wait until the sun is a little softer, or I need to walk down to the beach or whatever it is. But when I look through my photographs, I realize the best photography is iterative, meaning I start and then I try. I begin where I am and then I start to experiment. So then we walk down to the beach and then she does some yoga. And then her boyfriend was there. And so I was like, well, let's get a photo of you and your boyfriend. And once I did that, she's just like so happy and smiley. And then we experiment with like a little wall on the beach and, her doing some yoga poses and jumping for joy and, kind of trying to find the story and doing a headstand and pushing her hair back and holding a Lululemon yoga mat and obviously all the Lululemon clothes. But you get the idea that it's beginning where we are. And some of these images like this one, I'd probably retouch more, but I'm just kind of showing you stuff as it's coming from the camera to try to illustrate. Begin where you are. And then as for storytelling, one of the things I've found is this idea of finding the story within the story. So yes, this is Lululemon Ambassador, but if I kind of crank back through all these images real quick and I'll just go back to the beginning, it's like, well, what is the story? Maybe sitting on a rock and thoughtful, maybe arms up with her boyfriend. She loves these photos. Lululemon didn't send them to them. They don't need them, but this is just about connection and love and kindness. And then moments of reflection, moments of silliness, up close, handstands. You get the idea of just looking like, what is the story within the story? Now going to Costa Rica, I was brought down there to this amazing event and have tons of photographs, but I can't show a lot of them because it's under NDA, long story short. But this image, I love the structure on this beach, and I photographed it at this time at sunset, and then I came back to it after the sun had set. And this image really reminded me of that idea that my best photographs come when I circle back to what inspires me. I remember I walked by that structure and I was like, that thing is cool. I don't even know what it is, but it's on a beach in this remote area in Costa Rica. I want to go photograph that. And so I think I saw it the first time at like noon. I circled back at sunset and then I went and did other stuff. And then I circled back again at that kind of blue hour time right after sunset. And that I think the good photographs for me come when I'm constantly like circling back. Like if I notice something, don't let it go. Another thing I want to do a lot is to photograph connection, love, and kindness. This is one of my good friends and his family, and they were standing, but I had them kind of get down to Alina, his daughter's level. They're all kind of touching each other and they're smiling, and this is in Northern California. And when I'm photographing families, it's not families that you're photographing, it's the love the kindness, the connection that a family has. I love doing that. And this particular shoot was so fun. So again, something I love, something I want to do more of. This is my daughter, Sophie. I convinced her to let me capture some of her senior photos. She graduated from high school this year, and she went skateboarding around and had her beautiful surfboard, and we just kind of goofed around and had fun for maybe 45 minutes or something like that. And I love these photos. And these remind me of the importance of making the effort to photograph family. Like, take the effort to photograph those that mean the most to you. Yes, photograph other families, love and kindness, and then make sure you're doing your own. Next, I'm going to show some selfies from when I was in Switzerland a couple weeks ago with my daughter Annie, and we were at the highest point in Europe, and then we were at breakfast, and we were in Barcelona. And the selfie thing, I was thinking about, I kind of was going through my images and realizing that I have a lot of great selfies. This is a world champion surfer. That's Raphael, my friend again. This was when I went to Adobe, when I was at a Sony event. This is the CEO of Sony. And we were hanging out. And I mean, what kind of interesting moment. But just what I kind of dismissed selfies, but then I was looking through my photos like, I love them. I love these photos when I'm connected with people. And so it reminded me that this is something I want to do more of. Here's a photograph. Our dog had puppies this year, my wife and daughter Sophie and the 10 puppies. And here's all of us with the puppies. And I'll play this little video on the right. This is the one we adopted. This is Aloha here. And so photographing life events. This is a photograph. I handed the camera to someone when we were at the beach. We already saw this, but I told them how to hold the camera, where to stand. And I love this family in my photo. So what I realized, I also love photos of my own family and actually giving people instructions when I hand them my phone to capture them. All right, so you can kind of see where I'm generating ideas, I'm generating fuel, I'm generating fire for the year, for the stuff that's coming ahead. Another thing I had mentioned is that it can be helpful to kind of go back to our roots as well. This is me as a little kid, and I'm the one on the right, far right, and the photo on the left. I'm the one with the pink skinny tie and the image on the right. And kind of going back to the roots and trying to tune into what is our why. And so here's little me, and here's little me. And I realized that as a kid, the question I was always asking, and I've shared this before, is how do we live well? It's the question I've been asking my whole life. How do we become our best selves? How do we create our best work? And I wrote a little story about it in fourth grade. And so for me, when I'm photographing astronauts, I'm thinking about how do what they do, how does that affect who I am? When I'm photographing a world champion surfer, I'm asking that same question. I'm in pursuit of this, whether I'm photographing billionaires, a best friend, or I'm at an event, in this case, Adobe, or I'm speaking at Google. I'm kind of saying like, how do I take what I'm learning from these experiences and how does this shape who I am? Like, this is Facebook headquarters or Meta. They have this painted wall, and then on the ground, they have all the paint splatter. And I love that they didn't put a drop cloth down. And so I'm sort of searching, like, when I'm at these places that these brands, what can these brands teach me about life? And so one of my biggest takeaways from these experiences of working with big brands is to keep it human and to keep it real. And what I mean by that is sometimes we get so intimidated or enthralled by a big brand, we think, wow, we forget that what makes a good brand is good people. And what makes good people is that they're trustworthy, they're down to earth, there's this realness about it. And it keeps things human. And so these photos are not from this last year, but this is Millie Bobby Brown on set. And there's this little clip I want to play for you from the director giving her feedback. And the reason why I want to play this is because I love the way that he gives her feedback. So, Derek, you have to tell me if you guys can hear this audio, but I'll play it. And then if we can't hear it, I'll just tell you what he's saying. So here goes.
Yeah, we're not hearing it.
Okay. What else? That's fine. He's saying, play it again. They're playing feedback tape. I'll just turn the volume off. And he says, he's just commenting on one word. He's like, keep it human. And she's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, do whatever you want, but just add a little bit more in the word human. And they like cut the scene and took all this time for one word, which was humanity, human. And I love that. And that's what I think made this piece so well. And so when I'm at different places with astronauts or at Sony headquarters, I'm kind of asking myself that question, what makes it human? And the director, he said to Millie, he said, do it how you want to do it, but give it a little more. And I think what makes it human is this kind of this realness. And this is true whether I'm with elite athletes or with a billionaire or with CEO of something, and to get there, I realized that part of humanity is teamwork. And so this is I was photographing Ivan Basso, and he was in the wind tunnel. At the time, he was the fastest cyclist in the world. But the elite level of performance always comes from a team. And I think part of being a good human and these big brands is there's individuals, but there's also teams. And so one of the things I've been reflecting on my photography is sort of like, who is on my team? Who are the people who are influencing me, who are helping me, or giving feedback, who are outside of myself? Like the cyclist there is on the stand, and then he has seven world-class people in all these different areas of aerodynamics and bike mechanics to help him improve. And this leads me to kind of my last thing, and then Derek, you and I will talk, is so far I've been kind of looking at positive stuff. I've also found it's helpful to look backwards in the slingshot mode and say, what went wrong? What needs to be fixed? These photos were not taken this last year, but I go back to them a lot. Jack O'Neill on the left was cold, so he invented the wetsuit. Yvon Chouinard on the right didn't like the climbing gear, so he started Black Diamond, and then it turned into Patagonia. But they were both discontent with something, and that led to iterating new things. And so for me, as I realized moving forward, and this is my final slide here, is that for 2025, what I really want to do, one of the things I need to fix is work with brands that need these kind of people to be photographed. I love photographing poets and actors, ambassadors, academics, athletes, authors, artists. And I want to do something in the space of wellness, of outdoors, things that are healthy, that are mindful, that are about making the world a better place. And so I'll stop sharing here, but the idea with this little last slide, and then Derek will lead to a question for you, but is to take this idea of what's missing from the photography that I'm doing. And Derek, you complimented me really nice, great work, which is great. But to get us where we need to go, sometimes it's also like, yeah, that was great, but now what's next? And sort of, I'll go to running. If I ran a marathon in February, that will not help me run a marathon 2025 in June, unless I tap back into that, reflect on the training, start training myself. So what may be wrong right now, and this is just for me being a little bit vulnerable, is I haven't really stirred up these client connections with these purpose-driven brands and planted seeds, set up the momentum needed to do that kind of work in 2025. So one of the things I need to do over the next bit of time before January 1st comes is start figuring out strategic steps that I can take to do that work with those brands, with those type of people, to tell those kind of stories, if that makes sense. January 1st is too late to start. I need to start now, reflecting on all the stuff that I loved, let that kind of fire me up, and then move forward and kind of create a plan so that by the time I can start reaching out to people, which, when is that? Maybe January 5th or something, right? I'm not starting at square zero, if that makes sense. So
Totally.
let me pivot this back to you for a moment, which is, if you had to use discontent as a tool to discover how to be more innovative, looking at your own photography, what's something that's missing from 2024 that you would love to add into in 2025?
Hmm. I think something that's missing is with that discontent, I never found like the missing piece. And for me, what I mean by that is I knew something was missing. And I looked back and it's like, well, why am I not motivated? Or what is it about my work? You know, we talk all the time about looking at your our work
Yeah.
And we're like, well, what is it? Why does this not move me? Why does certain work move me? Why does certain
Mm.
work not move me? I I had the discontent, but I was never able to find like what was that missing piece that I needed to take that discontent and move past it and move into, okay, I have the discontent. Well, now I'm going to figure out
Yes.
what is this discontent with? What am I lacking? What do I need?
Yes.
And I really never narrowed it down. And I kind of just, it was a constant state of discontent,
Okay.
on top of what I was talking about, like all the stuff I had mentioned earlier, with in my earlier response.
Yeah.
I did make progress in certain ways, but there still is just this level of discontent that hasn't come full circle. It hasn't
Okay.
birthed something that I'm like, okay, discontent with this led to this. It
Yeah. And
hasn't
let
led
me,
to something. Yeah.
can we play with this a little bit?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, just for the fun, kind of like, because, and to give people context, we did a series on coaching. We did a series on like joy of the journey, kind of getting us reconnected. Now here we are. How do we end the year and then launch the new year? So just to play with that, what might be fun is to get specific. Like if you were to say, Chris, what's missing from, or I'll just go to you. What's something that you would have loved that might have been adding to that disconnect content that would have pushed that back a little bit? I'm going to give you four scenarios. You're going to pick one. You got flown to the Caribbean to photograph one of your favorite musicians. Um, they're shooting a video and you're doing stills and you got paid like a ton of money and it was a weekend job. So that could be like basically high paid, cool location, great person, aligned with who you are and what you love. So that could be like that could be missing. What could be missing is creating work that you could sell as fine art, creating a print or an image that you could have like posted and listed. Or, and again, you can tell I'm just reaching at these random things. Another thing that could have led to the discontent was, um, well, I just go back to the commercial work. I think getting paid, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not a commercial photographer, but when you get paid to do it, it really lights a fire because you're required to step up your game. You're not just lackadaisical. So maybe there was a commercial component, maybe there was a personal photography project component. The last little idea related to the discontent, um, perhaps it was, I know you really like to do things that are meaningful and inspire and help others. And maybe it was that if you had done something like a workshop and got really well paid for it and had really great reviews, that could have also pushed that discontent back, right? So again, what in there could have be discontent that you could then say, well, yeah, okay, next year I'm going to aim for that. And maybe we don't get the high paying commercial job, but aiming for it creates certain kind of fuel and energy and openness, which many times does lead to it, because we think they're going to come to us. We have to go to them, right? Energetically. So anyway, back to you. I know I
You know
talked a
me
lot.
too well, man. We gotta
Uh,
you got too much access to my brain, man. You're
I
like
do.
in
I do.
there. I started smiling when you went into that last one because I
Okay.
think that's where creating meaningful work. You know me so well. You know that I'm very big into there. Like beautiful work is great, but I love meaningful work. And one thing that as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, I did just recently have something that pushed back the discontent.
Okay.
And so I was asked to donate a piece of mine for there was an art drive where a friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine were raising or were accepting donations for a couple different community centers for of art supplies.
Yeah.
And they were doing a raffle. So
Yeah.
people would come bring their art supplies, to
Yeah.
donate. And then there was a raffle. So it was a bunch of local artists of all different
Yeah.
concentrations and I was asked to donate a piece. So I donated a signed print,
Okay.
framed and everything. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was okay, what am I going to do? And it really knowing my audience, knowing where it was taking place, knowing the crowd, knowing all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
different things. It was my test of like, all right, well, let's see how well. Like I
Mm,
talk all this stuff. I get behind a mic and I put my little headphones on. And it's like,
yeah.
but are you out there doing it? Because I'm very big in the practice, not the preaching.
Right. Right.
And the moment that pushed back my discontent was hearing people there talk about my work
Yeah.
and hearing people talk about the work that didn't know that the guy sitting right behind them is the guy that shot the photo.
Yes.
And
Can I
it
interrupt
wasn't,
you real quick?
yeah, go
Real
for
quick.
it.
And again, if we're coaching kind of thing, what I'm hearing you say is meaning, so something meaningful, getting out there, and not something that's just going to boost your ego, because that is almost, I feel like, crushes your spirit. You're like, okay, great. And I don't need more like ego advancement, but you
Yeah.
like being that you were, no, they didn't know you were talking about you, but they were. And so again, if we're thinking, then it's like, okay, how can we find ways in 2025 to do more of that, right? Because that's going to ignite something that maybe, let's say, and I'll just pivot for a second. Some photographers winning a prize and getting, their name, and they get some little award and a little paper printout they can hang on the wall that they won first prize. That ego gratification is really important. So if that was a person, I'd be like, okay, let's see how many contests you can win. But I don't think you're a contest winner. I mean, I think your work is, but I don't think it's going to feed your soul.
Mm,
So it's more of like, okay, how are ways you can meaning, so you're big, something bigger than yourself. It's, and I even think it inspires other people. So it's not like it just doesn't point back to you, but it's generative in its inspiration, and where it can be anonymous, right? And then
Yes.
tell me if this is true or not,
Yeah,
but it seems
totally.
like,
And it's
yeah,
like a genuine sense of joy. Seeing
yeah,
people get joy out of it. It had
mm,
nothing and there were it's not like I'm leaning back and saying, "Hey, that's my photo."
right, right,
No,
right,
it was literally seeing someone derive joy out of my image.
yeah,
And there was a sense of it of me in a way of, okay, I made the right choice. If I
mm,
say, Chris, you get to
yeah,
donate a print,
yeah,
and when you know, say you go there and you go to the event
yeah,
and nobody's talking, and it's like, okay, and you're looking at your print and you're like, oh, I clearly missed the mark. Like I didn't understand the market, and I
right,
didn't. It's a much different feeling than when you're like, wow, I have people staring at this and talking about it,
right,
and people coming up to me that I do know who are like, wow, everyone wants to win the raffle for yours. Like everyone's like,
yes,
trying to win that,
yeah,
and it has nothing to do with the ego part. It's about
yeah,
the I understood the assignment, and it
yeah,
showed that look, I can then take this knowledge and apply it. And that I did, because anytime we
yes,
do something right in a business sense, for
yeah,
me, this was like kind of like a validation
yeah,
of like,
yeah,
okay, I've always wanted to be more intentional. I've always wanted
yeah,
to take photos that I can use for this. And if I
right,
can use photos that inspire,
yeah,
that for me, what it was seeing people inspired, motivated, getting joy out of a piece of work that I had created.
yeah,
And then I
yeah,
made the right decision of, okay, well, this wasn't the time to post, to print out a sunset photo.
yeah,
And I think that is just kind of sometimes we get in our heads and we say, am I cut out for this? Or do I know what I'm doing? And that was kind of a moment for me to say, you know what? It's multifaceted. I know what I'm doing.
yeah,
And also, I appreciate, seeing people who have no idea that this is me getting joy out of something that I created, which I think is awesome
yeah,
because that
yes.
inspires people.
Yeah. And let me see if I can, this is beautiful too, by the way. And I know we have just a few more minutes, but let me see if I can make this relatable to other people as well. And what I'm hearing you say, we talked about meaning, we talked about ego, we talked about all those things, and that also strategy. I think that you strategically thought about what the context is, and so like, you deliver to that. So there's a satisfaction, almost like puzzle pieces click, they fit together. And you're like, yes. But I think relating it to the rest of us, what maybe will resonate with people is most of us have our photography in a little shoebox, shoebox, and it's just not out there. And we're kind of like, am I any good? I kind of think I'm good. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. We don't know. And so I think feedback was a big part of that. I think one of the reasons we
Totally.
we do photography you use the word validation, is just looking for how does this impact others? Like I know how it impacts me, but that's not enough in photography because I think the point of a photograph is that it's shared. And a photograph becomes complete once it's been shared. I might go to like the recording musician sings a song for themselves or they're that's great, but they put on an album and then it's how does that affect like send it out into the world. So that could be something that's coming in for people. How do we do that? And then maybe just to tie it to me for a moment, which is the Lululemon stuff of that one ambassador in our town in Santa Barbara, they put up one of the images and they picked a great photo. You never know with the client, but and it's huge. It's this big poster. It's in the front of the store and it's going to be there for a year. And so people are seeing it and they're like, Chris, I saw your photo. And, and again, for me, it was really nice that the image came off the hard drive and into the real world. And so that's the thing I want to encourage people. Like, as you're thinking about 2025, I'm guessing one of the things that makes most photographers discontent is photographs on a hard drive or just on Instagram. It's almost like they're there and gone. They have such a short life. One of the things I think that collectively, I could be wrong, makes us more happy and gives us fuel is getting those images off the hard drive, printing them out, getting feedback from others, and doing something that helps us see our work. Like I almost feel like you saw it new. You saw it through other people's eyes. And that's powerful. That's really powerful stuff. Because ultimately, if you ask 100 people why you're a photographer, they'll often say, so I can show the world, I can show others the world through my own eyes. But I think what most of us are doing is just seeing the world through our own eyes, but we're not sharing it, showing it, printing it, doing those things. So anyway, that's a really beautiful example. And again, I know we're kind of at the end, but my hope is that this little presentation and stuff takes you back through these things. So remember first, it was kind of like think forecasting like a year from now, what do we want to be able to say? I want to be able to say that I've done, a certain number of shoots for commercial brands that are purpose driven and that are storytelling and that are in beautiful locations. So I know that's something, or you want, run a marathon or whatever it is. So we kind of start with that end. And then also we're tapping into what in our own photography this last year worked, brought us joy. Why did we like it? And then moving into 2025, what are we missing? What do we want to carry forward? And kind of looking at both sides of those. So anyway, I hope that this is encouragement for people. I hope that over the next, week and a half or so, that we all take some time to ask these questions so that when we come to January 1st, we are ahead of everyone else. We have already started. And our craft is on the track. And I'm excited for you, Derek, too, and what that will mean. Because what I hear a little bit of you saying is this last year was a little bit of a lull. I hear that kind of in between. And I think that could be a little one of these. And I think 2025 could then be get you in a new spot. I don't know.
This is why I needed to reinvigorate and
Yeah, yeah.
I needed all the re's.
Yes, yes. And I will say
Right.
too, my lull, just to speak to myself, is income. My income was really low this year. I think I kind of I lost sight a little bit of my commercial stuff. That kind of faded and I kind of was like, oh, kind of discouraged, more discouraged, more discouraged. And I'm like, okay, people, boom, let's get that back up. And so, I think I've satisfied with my imagery, but not with the financial side. Finances we should talk about at some point because that's an important part of our craft. But but anyway, just to be vulnerable in my own, that I'm not like I'm all perfect and this is all great. More like, okay, that's mine. And I want to do that same slingshot thing of like, okay, looking backward, yeah, that's where it was, but now this is where I want to go. So
I love
awesome to be
that.
on here. Grateful to get to connect and share and all those things. So
Always. And I want to thank you since this is your last time for 2024.
yes,
I want
yes,
to thank you for all the wisdom and
yes,
positive vibes and
yes,
motivation, man. I mean, it really is. It's great to have someone come on who can make you want to instantly pick up your camera and start doing things. And
yeah,
it's little pieces and putting little pieces together, surrounding yourself with the right people, number one.
right. That
Aligning
team,
and
that's a
the
huge
team.
part.
That's it. I mean, you're
That's
as
it.
good as the people that are around you. And
Yes.
to go back to the consistency thing, You know
Yes.
what? If I have Chris on once a year, does that really help me along unless I take the reins from there? No, because then I have to be Chris over
Yeah.
and over and over, and I got to be, and obviously if I could be Chris in my head over, then I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't be here. Like Chris would, you know what I mean? Like I
Right.
need that person that, and so having that regularity and that consistency, where you know what, over time it builds up, and it's like hearing, it's the like positive reinforcement, and
Yes.
hand in hand, maybe that's a better term than consistency, is that constant positive reinforcement where it's like positive reinforcement with consistency, it builds
Yeah.
good habits.
Because the reality is, I mean, being a photographer is hard in any way, amateur, professional, and you get beaten down and you lose a lot. I mean, you miss a lot of shots, you miss a lot of moments, and or you don't get the job. You know, I talked about my finances or the career or the economic climate shifts or
Mhm.
but like what I've kind of realized, that whole team thing, which I didn't talk about a lot, but is like without my team, and you're on my team, I mean, you inspire me in so many ways, encourage me. I couldn't get to where I need to go. And if you look at high performance, all high performers have a team. So one of my friends was one of the best triathletes in the world. He decided he was going to be the world champion. And so he then hires a coach which was at that caliber. So he's not going to hire a coach that couldn't help him win an age group event. But so basically we assemble a team based on our aspiration and our vision, right? And so as photographers, we tend to isolate. We tend to just be self-made. We just come up with ourselves. We watch videos, we figure it out. But I think if we can assemble, so to speak, a team, man, it like makes all the difference. Like I don't think I could pull through without all of our conversations because I have times where I'm so discouraged. But to have someone you can say that to, talk through it, deconstruct it, um, and then also create goals based on it. Because, and then just play with this a little bit more. I know we're at the end here, but it's kind of like I'll talk to some people. I'm going to go with a marathon, and I'm like, man, I just am not fit right now, and I'm not getting sponsored to run, and they're like, no, dude, you won the Boston Marathon last February, and I'm like, yes, thank you, like that was cool, but right now today I'm not fit. I'm not getting sponsored. I'm not, and I think photographers understand that. Other people are kind of look at your past successes and they're like, well, you got it made, like,
Mm,
but the
that's a
reality
great
is
point.
your last year doesn't matter. I mean, it matters to everyone else. It's great. They like it. But to you, what matters is right now and moving forward. And so, as creatives, to kind of create that momentum and think about that and not just get the feedback on who we were, to your point, you need to kind of shake yourself, past self off and realize here I am right now and here's where I'm going. So, um, it's a unique craft. And with that, I encourage people, whether pro or amateur, it's all the same, right? Because let's say the amateur, they're like, well, yeah, but you went on a safari last February and you photographed a lion. That's like the best lion photo I've ever seen. Yes, that was a year ago, right? What are we going to do this year?
What have you
Last,
done for me lately?
yeah, yeah. So true. Oh, man.
I needed to hear that last little bit because I think that
Mm.
is such a great conversation that we need to have with ourselves and open up.
Yeah,
And you're right. I mean, it's, you can rest on a reputation, and I feel like you're doing just that. You're resting.
that's it.
Gotta keep it moving. We talk about it all the time. There's like an underlying theme to all of our conversations, whether they're on camera or us just
Yes.
talking offline. And it's like it's always about moving forward. And even when things are going better for us, it's always like, well, what can we do more? How do we keep this momentum going? Like I've never heard
Yes.
us just sit there like, man, I've had a great past 6 months. I'm just gonna hang
Yes.
out. It's
Yes. Yes.
always like, what's the next move? What's the next step? Where do we
Yes.
go from here? And I think that's the right mentality to have. And again, I have you to keep me honest.
Yes.
You have me to keep you honest. And on
Right.
top of everyone else that we have in our network that is
Yes.
doing the same. And it's kind of like when you build the right network,
Yeah.
it's like solar energy. You don't have to plug it in. It's
Yes.
constant. It's like
It
this,
comes in.
you get the momentum, the
Right.
pendulum swing. It's like a constant solar operated pendulum that just constantly keeps swinging, and knowing that even when you're on the backswing, it's gonna come back around.
It's
And I
gonna
think
and it's gonna you're gonna have your team back to the director I mentioned in the beginning, who's just finishing his film, and then he starts another one, as I mentioned. Your teammates, like everyone else, is like, "Congrats, you've 2 years of hard work, and this is going to be amazing." And then your friends are like, "So what's your next project?" And you're like,
Ooh,
"Ooh, right." I think everyone else, like, let's say to your marathon, they're going to be like, "Yeah, you did a marathon," and then I'm going to be like, "Okay, so what's next?" Are you doing another
a
marathon?
great.
When's the next 10K? Yeah.
That's a
And
great
your
point.
your buddies, they're like, "Yes, we celebrate you, but we also know that, like, to your point on the pendulum, it's about this like momentum that, this almost like infinity or whatever the thing is. It Photography isn't a one-hit wonder kind of deal, you know. We want to like get good and then continually get good. Keep growing, keep expanding, keep moving. And that's the beauty of all this. So we could talk
Totally.
forever, but thank you everyone who's joining. And I hope that this provides something. If nothing else, Derek, it's so fun to collaborate with you on these. And B&H,
Always.
thank you. So grateful for all of your support, and Sony too. I mean, it's amazing. I love that Sony is passionate about. I love that. I mean, that smile, that guy says it all. I guess photography can be so serious. And then when I photographed him, I was like, yeah, I gotta smile more when I take pictures. Kind of funny. Like, because I think I have this really expensive camera and I'm really, in the moment, but it's like, yeah, let me bring some joy back into this. Anyway,
That's
um,
it. Right.
yeah,
Joy. No, huge. I'm gonna double down on that. Huge
yeah,
thank you to Sony for supporting. I feel like I say that a lot on here,
yeah,
but we
yeah,
really are grateful for the support that we get, and it's great to see when brands are so supportive of education and inspiring because
yeah,
that's why we all do it. And this, we try to be the community that uplifts our viewers and our own
yes,
community that we've created here. We want to be a collective inspiration. So huge
yes,
thanks to everybody that does support and everybody that gets support from us. I think the
yeah,
community is cyclical and sometimes you're the
yes,
mentor and sometimes you're the mentee and you never
yes,
know when you're on one side of the coin or the other. Your
yeah.
work, you can inspire people and because they, just because they don't tell you or you don't hear it doesn't mean you're not inspiring people. So,
Totally. Let me just add to that real quick. And sometimes you
yes.
can inspire people just by having a camera. I'm sure this happens, like we see someone with a camera pointing it up. This happens to me all the time. And I walk by, I'm like, what are they looking at? And it just like photographers out in the world inspire people to pause, to look, to absorb. So I think we
Mhm.
can be mentors just by carrying cameras and photographing things and celebrating people. And, we all want to be seen. We all want to be loved. And we can share that. And I don't know. I believe photography can be a huge change agent. Sometimes we do it verbally like we're doing here, but sometimes people's presence. I know a lot of photographers who aren't very talkative, but their presence, like I'll just watch them photograph, let's say like a landscape, and I'm like, oh, right, this is sacred because I just see how they're working. And so sometimes it's what just the presence of someone. Obviously, sometimes it's the presence of their work. But anyway, so encourage people just to know that I think being a photographer, you have a chance to make the world a better place, you know?
Totally. We share that same evangelical perspective
Yeah,
about
totally.
photography that it really does. I mean, we're proof that it can make you a better person
Yeah.
and at the same time that you're becoming a better photographer. So
Yeah.
it's time to take that next step. Like Chris said, don't wait until January 1st. It's
Yeah.
such an easy time, everyone's like, "Well, you don't have to wait until yeah, but it's such an easy time, especially in our culture. We've kind of just stuck it there as like, hey, new year, new you, new start, whatever. Use it. So
Yeah.
use this next week.
Use it.
Of course, you guys have a break. We're not going to have another for our live viewers. We're not going to have another live event space until the 30th. So you guys have a week to kind of use this time to reflect, recharge, and reignite your photography. There, you like how I put a bow
I
on that?
love that. That was amazing. You're a professional.
Chris, always good
Oh
chatting,
yeah.
man. And to all of our
Likewise.
viewers out there, again, we are going to have a little bit of break for our live viewers, but we have plenty of content over there on the YouTube channel to keep you all busy. So huge thank you to you for tuning in, for Sony for supporting, and of course, Chris for another wonderful year. of hanging out with us and imparting his wisdom on us. And there will be more to come of that in 2025. So, on behalf of the entire team here, and of course, Splash Screen, who's off somewhere doing something, he's not working today, but he is a huge inspiration to me because he's one of those people that's always creating. Uh,
Yes.
Huge thank you to everybody. That's it. Another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.